You ever notice when a couple shows up smiling for the cameras, but their bodies are screaming something else entirely? That was Prince Harry and Meghan Markle at Kevin Costner's charity gala in Santa Barbara. Their first joint appearance in nearly half a year, and it wasn't just awkward, it was almost painful to watch. Meghan leaned in, Harry leaned out. She mirrored his movements, and he left her hanging. The smiles didn't match. The energy didn't match. It felt like two actors trapped in a contract they couldn't break. And the wildest part? They weren't acting well. Meghan threw on her adoring wife look, the same one she's used in interviews and red carpets. But this time, the mask cracked. It looked forced. It looked clumsy. Almost like her performance software was glitching. Meanwhile, Harry... he wasn't even trying. His eyes were dead. His posture screamed, "Get me out of here!" And the man looked like he'd rather be in a war zone than standing next to his wife. Now here's the thing. 5 months of silence between public appearances isn't normal for any couple in the public eye, let alone two people who built their entire brand on being seen. That gap wasn't about taking time off. That was strategic silence. A calculated PR freeze. And suddenly, they pop up at this charity event as if nothing happened. That's not a comeback. That's a crisis response. A staged reminder, look, we're still together. But the audience didn't buy it, because the truth slipped through their body language, and it was louder than any speech. Harry had just come back from the UK, where people saw a different man. He was smiling again. He looked lighter, even while sharing a stage with King Charles. But back in California, back next to Meghan, that glow evaporated. He looked drained, beaten down, like someone who gave away his freedom only to realise he built his own prison. Meghan was still on brand, still doing the my husband routine for the cameras. But it sounded less like affection and more like a catchphrase. Something she says not because it's true, but because the brand requires it. And Harry? He wasn't buying in. No PDA, no warmth. Not even a glance that said, I still care. People noticed. People were whispering that this isn't a marriage anymore, it's a contract. A deal. And the way it all began, it makes sense. Go back to the early days. Meghan showering him with love, convincing him he was misunderstood, mistreated, that she was the only one who truly saw him. That wasn't romance. That was the textbook playbook of manipulation. Love bombing. And Harry, desperate for validation, bought it wholesale. But now, the spell is breaking. His posture, his face, even the way he avoids her touch, says it all. And look at Harry physically. The weight gain isn't just age or comfort, it's emotional weight, depression, regret. This was a man who once lit up every room, the cheeky royal who could outshine even the Queen in popularity. Now he looks like a shadow of himself, trapped in a narrative that isn't his. That charity gala didn't look like a date night. It looked like a fire drill. A desperate attempt to convince the public they're fine while everything behind the curtain is collapsing. And here's the part no one wants to admit. Maybe this whole marriage was never about love. For Meghan, it's always been about the move, the positioning, the next chapter in the career playbook. From day one, it wasn't just about marrying a prince. It was about merging into royalty, climbing higher, flipping the title into brand power. That wide-eyed, humble Duchess act, that was phase one. But beneath the charm was strategy. Frogmore Cottage wasn't a home, it was a stepping stone. And when she saw Catherine with the bigger house, the bigger title, and the future crown, Meghan realised she'd never outrank her. That wasn't just about real estate. That was about hierarchy, power. So she pulled Harry away. From his family, his brother, his military ties, even his own identity. She sold it as freedom, as privacy. But what they built in California wasn't a sanctuary. It was a stage, a curated performance of independence that never stopped chasing the spotlight. Netflix deals, podcasts, orchestrated interviews, everything manicured, everything designed for headlines. Harry thought he was escaping a life of performance only to walk into one 10 times worse. And critics aren't wrong when they say Meghan doesn't feel real. Her interviews, her body language, even the way she repeats lines like, "my husband," it all feels rehearsed, scripted. She comes off like someone who binged too many TED Talks and thought she could brand herself into authenticity. But when the cameras stop rolling, the reports say she's cold, calculated, controlling. And Harry? He looks like a man in free fall. His shoulders slumped, his expressions hollow, as if every public appearance costs him a piece of his soul. The cracks aren't cracks anymore. They're craters. When she grabs his hand, he pulls away. When she talks, he checks out. And when he smiles, it's the kind of smile you give when you're stuck at a dinner party you can't escape. That's why body language experts are all over this. They've pointed out the lack of touch, the uneven stances, the awkward proximity, and it all adds up to one ugly conclusion. This isn't a marriage. It's a press release with a photo op attached. Which begs the question, why resurface now? Why risk showing the cracks so publicly after half a year of silence? The timing is suspicious. Harry just returned from the UK. He stood beside King Charles. He looked alive again, a prince among his people. Maybe that stirred something. Maybe Meghan saw it as a threat. Harry reminded of his roots, of his power beyond her. So what better way to pull the narrative back than a sudden joint appearance? A staged, "we're fine" moment. But instead of unity, all anyone saw was distance. Instead of love, all they saw was ice. And if you looked closely at Harry's face, you saw something darker. Regret, disappointment, the bitter realization that he gave up everything for this, for her. And maybe it was never real to begin with. Because the saddest truth is this. Harry didn't just give up a kingdom. He gave up himself. The soldier, the brother, the joker, the man who once brought joy without effort. Gone. What's left is a hollowed-out version of that prince, standing beside a woman who still glows for the cameras but seems to drain the light out of him. And the whispers of divorce? They're not just speculation anymore. They're a pattern because Meghan has mastered the art of exits. From her first marriage, to her family, to the palace, every exit was calculated, monetized, weaponized. This will be no different. And when it comes, she'll spin it. She'll play the misunderstood heroine again, the victim of cruelty, the survivor of a loveless union, and Hollywood will lap it up. Publishers will pay millions for her side. Streaming giants will fight for the rights. She'll headline the divorce of the decade. Meanwhile, Harry will be left in silence, trying to defend himself in interviews no one really wants to watch. Maybe another half-hearted memoir. But mostly, a man trying to rebuild a life that disappeared the moment he walked away from the palace gates. The tragedy isn't that this is ending. It's that it probably never had a chance. Meghan saw a broken man. She offered him validation. She wrapped his grief in romance. But it was all a setup. And now, every time we see them together, the illusion slips. Harry isn't in love anymore. He's trapped. And Meghan? She's already planning her next move. And this is only half the story. Because what comes next could be the final act. The leaks, the solo appearances, the carefully planted interviews, until finally the joint statement drops. One of those cold, sanitized announcements about mutual respect and loving decisions. but behind the words will be years of resentment and regret. And when it happens, it won't just be the end of a marriage, it will be the end of Prince Harry as we once knew him. So let's be brutally honest. Whatever we saw at that charity gala wasn't romance, it wasn't chemistry, it was survival, a brand maintenance exercise. The Sussex brand is bleeding out, and that appearance was a bandage slapped over a gaping wound. But bandages don't fix fractures. And this marriage? It's cracked to the core. Here's where it gets dark. Because if you think Meghan doesn't see the writing on the wall, you don't know Meghan. She's always been 10 steps ahead. Look at the pattern. Her first marriage ended the second it stopped serving her. She mailed back the ring. No explanation, no drama, just an efficient exit. Her relationship with her family? Same thing. When they became inconvenient, she cut ties. Cold. When the palace became a cage she couldn't control, she flipped it into the narrative of the century. Victim of cruelty, rebel duchess, freedom fighter. Every ending has been a beginning for her, and this one will be no different. People think divorce would destroy her brand. Wrong. It will relaunch it. Imagine the headlines. Meghan Markle, survivor of a loveless royal marriage. Netflix will want the docuseries. Publishers will trip over themselves for the memoir. Oprah, Gayle, every talk show under the sun, all hers. She'll position herself as the woman who dared to love a prince and suffered for it. And the world will eat it up. Because she knows how to play that card. She's done it before. She'll do it again. But Harry doesn't have the same game. Without Meghan, he's stripped bare. He can't just stroll back into Buckingham Palace with open arms waiting for him. Those bridges are ashes. William doesn't trust him. Charles may tolerate him for appearances, but the bond is broken. And the British public? They'll never forget the interviews, the books, the accusations. He can't go back. And he doesn't belong in California either. That's the cruel irony. He left one world for another and now fits in neither. Look closely at him now. Every appearance takes more out of him. His shoulders slouch further, his eyes look emptier. The spark that once defined him, gone. This is a man caught between a past he can't return to and a future he doesn't want. That's why his smiles don't reach his eyes anymore. Why his jokes fall flat. Why he looks like he's carrying a weight no one else can see. And if you think that weight is just the media pressure, think again. That's the weight of regret. The weight of a man who traded his birthright for a dream that turned into a nightmare. Meghan still thrives on the spotlight, but Harry was never built for it. He wanted peace, not cameras. Simplicity, not stagecraft. But he followed her lead, and now he's trapped in a Hollywood machine that chews up authenticity and spits out sound bites. And that's the saddest part. Harry was once the most relatable royal, the rogue prince, the one who laughed, who played, who broke the stiff traditions with ease. People loved him because he was real. And now he looks like an extra in his own life, standing beside Meghan while she delivers lines to the cameras. He's not a partner anymore. He's a prop. So what's next? The script is already writing itself. First, more solo appearances. Meghan on her own glowing, confident, still camera ready. Harry on his own quieter, more withdrawn, maybe looking more lost than ever. Then the leaks start. Anonymous sources, whispering about tension, about disagreements, about Harry feeling suffocated or Meghan feeling unsupported. Those whispers won't be random. They'll be planted, strategic. Step 2 of the exit plan. Step 3, the trial separation, framed as a loving decision, space to heal, respect for each other. A joint statement filled with sanitized buzzwords. But make no mistake, it won't be about love, it'll be about positioning. Meghan positioning herself as the survivor. Harry positioned as the lost soul who couldn't keep up. And then, the big play. The divorce narrative. Meghan's magnum opus. Every talk show, every headline. The book, the docuseries, the staged interviews. She'll own the breakup. She'll frame it as empowerment, and she'll cash in like never before. Meanwhile, Harry will be left in the shadows. A man without a country, without a brand, without an identity. And here's the cruel truth. People will sympathise with him. They'll pity him. But pity doesn't sell. Pity doesn't rebuild a legacy. Pity just fades. He'll be yesterday's headline. The once beloved prince who burned it all down for love and was left with nothing. But maybe that's not the worst outcome. Maybe, in some twisted way, that's freedom. Because if the marriage collapses, if the brand collapses, if the spotlight finally moves on, maybe Harry can start over. Not as a prince, not as a brand, just as Harry. The soldier who once dreamed of peace, the man who wanted a farm, a beer and a night of quiet. Maybe then, and only then, he finds himself again. But make no mistake. Meghan won't fade, she'll climb higher. Every setback in her life has been a setup for the next chapter, and this one will be her biggest yet. She's not playing checkers, she's not even playing chess, she's playing the long game, and Harry, he was just one move on the board. That's why watching them together now feels so off, because deep down, everyone knows the end game. This doesn't end in a Hollywood happily ever after. It ends with two people walking in opposite directions. One chasing the spotlight, the other running from it. One scripting the future, the other stuck rewriting the past. And when that charity gala photo fades, when the press releases stop, when the cameras move on, we'll all look back and realise that moment wasn't a comeback. It was the curtain call, the beginning of the end. And the only question left is, when the final act plays out, will Harry still recognise the man staring back in the mirror? Because right now, the answer looks like no, and that's the uncomfortable truth. So tell me, do you think this marriage was doomed from the start, or is there still a way back for Harry before the curtain drops? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe and stay tuned, because the royal drama isn't ending anytime soon, and what's coming next might just be the biggest bombshell yet.